If you remember the Hunger Games films, the chosen tribute spent 3 straight days in training before they were sent into the arena. Those sessions gave them a chance to demonstrate their abilities and learn practical survival skills. In contrast to the characters' brief preparation period, the actors themselves had significantly more time to strengthen their bodies and improve their stamina for the roles. How did the actors in the original The Hunger Games movie prepare for the level of physical fitness needed? Well, stars Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson had the most intense training for the first film. Fortunately, both of the actors had already been in movies that required them to be physically fit, but they both had to increase their fitness routines. Hutcherson had done stunt work previously in some of his movies, but he needed to pack on some extra muscle to play Peeta. For the first film, he trained with a Navy SEAL and lifted lots of weight in order to transform his body. I put on about 15 pounds of muscle, so that was a lot of eating chicken and a very high-protein, low-carb diet, says the actor. For Lawrence, the Oscar winner had even more action scenes than her fellow castmate, and so the team required her to do a diligent amount of cross-training. Her training consisted of running, free running, which is for agility, archery, climbing, combat, and yoga. Since Lawrence already stays in good shape, the intense training wasn't that much of a shock to her body. As far as the exercise goes, I like to stay in relatively good shape. It is so that when training comes along, I don't have to start from square one, she says. And co-star Amandla Stenberg, who played fan favorite Rue, trained by climbing and spending time in both real trees and man-made trees on the soundstage, similar to her character's method of defense. I had a custom-made harness so I wouldn't fall over, and it was actually really fun, she says. And even though she had a harness on, there was a hilarious moment on set when both she and Lawrence were sitting up in one of the trees, where Stenberg began to slide down the tree. Of course, the Hunger Games franchise owes its success to its cast. But a lot went into casting the right actors for the right roles. Director Gary Ross had a general idea of who he wanted to cast in some of the roles, although Lionsgate, one of the studios behind the film, convinced him to hold auditions for the roles. For the role of Katniss Everdeen, over 30 actresses auditioned or read for the role, including Oscar nominees Saoirse Ronan, Haley Steinfeld, and Abigail Breslin, as well as Emma Roberts, Chloe Grace Moretz, Kaya Scodelario, and Shailene Woodley. But Lawrence blew the casting directors, the studio, and Ross away. Ross described Lawrence as having an incredible amount of self-assuredness. You got the sense that this girl knew who she was. After she came in and did a test read with Ross, he was blown away and knew she was the right fit for the part. And in March 2011 was announced as the world's Katniss Everdeen. And a fun fact, she was only 20 years old and 2 years away from winning an Oscar. For the role of Peeta, several Disney Channel stars at the time had auditioned for the role, including Alexander Ludwig, Lucas Till, and Austin Butler. Even Emmy-winning Evan Peters, known for his work with writer-director Ryan Murphy, had auditioned to play the baker-turned-tribute. When Hutcherson auditioned, Ross saw him as the pitch-perfect casting and was blown away by the actor's extensive career as a child actor in the industry and his commitment to his craft. For casting Gale Hawthorne, actors that were in consideration included David Henry, Drew Roy, and Robbie Amell, before the team decided that Liam Hemsworth's charisma and simple take on Gale for the first film was the winning candidate.
It's not funny.
What are you gonna do with a 100-pound deer, Catnip?
When it came to building the dystopian world of Panem and bringing Suzanne Collins' world to life, Ross enlisted the help of production designer Philip Messina, whom he had previously worked with. Messina's influence on the Hunger Games was so huge that he worked on all 4 films. The first film was exclusively filmed in North Carolina. For District 12, the team decided that Henry River Mill Village on the outskirts of Burke County would substitute well for the mining town. DuPont State Forest was used as the location for the actual Hunger Games in the movie. The cornucopia was built on private land near the North Fork Reservoir near Asheville, North Carolina, while a majority of the fight sequences were filmed around the park. For the latter films, production expanded into Atlanta, Georgia, Hawaii, and even Germany, where the team utilized the brutalist architecture of Berlin to substitute for the locations of the capital. Messina and Ross, and later Francis Lawrence, who helmed the other films in the franchise, decided to use green screens as little as humanly possible, and instead rely on existing infrastructure and locations to bring a sense of truth and reality to the dystopian franchise.
I volunteer!
But besides the real-life locations and sets, the team wanted to really bring to life the craziness of the Capitol and its citizens in true fashion. Oscar nominee Judianna Makovsky was hired as the film's costume designer, and her first thought was that you can relate to the characters of the books so easily. You don't think of it as science fiction, and I always say, a suit's been around for over 100 years. What makes us think it's not going to be there for another 100 years? she says. Makovsky turned to artifacts from North America's history when designing the costumes seen throughout the film. For the District 12 outfits, she wanted to use gray or blue because coal from the mining town leaves black dust everywhere. For the Capitol, she wanted to create crazy costumes you'd see at the Metropolitan Opera and scale them down a bit. She combined 1930s aesthetics with the whimsy of the 18th century. She didn't want the costumes to be silly, but to have a sense of striking beauty and humor. For the makeup, the team needed to ensure that the colors on the characters' faces and the wigs and hairstyles matched the same extravagant outfits that Makovsky designed. Bright colors and dyes were used on several wigs that would match the actors' outfits. Jewelry designer Dana Schneider was brought on board to design the famous Mockingjay pin. She says it took a few months, and there were many models designed. She tried to use the design seen on the covers of the book, but the 2D image didn't translate well as a real piece. I had to figure out how the arrow connects to the beak. Where does the pin back go so it doesn't show? Will this survive stunts because of heavy action? But in the end, it all worked out. Besides the physical aspects of Panem and its people, the cinematography in the films was also important to ensure that everything was captured on the screen. Tom Stern was hired as the cinematographer of the first movie, who helped establish the overall look and style of the franchise, while Joe Willems picked up the reins for the remaining films in the series. Stern mentioned how the shot list was evolving for the first film with all of Ross's ideas. The team wanted to emulate a realistic look of the environment where the scene was happening, which meant needing to capture the right natural lighting. So the camera team shot at slightly odd angles to make sure the background light was captured correctly. And since a lot of the game sequences involved action, the team used shaky action shots, while also ensuring still panoramic shots to capture the vastness of the games and bring the audience closer. Franchise producer Nina Jacobson and Brad Simpson returned for the next installment in the franchise, the adaptation of Sunrise on the Reaping, which takes a closer look at the games that Haymitch won in the franchise's narrative. And with them on board, Francis Lawrence returns. Of course, this is a stellar team that brings back some of the franchise's most important artists to ensure the continuity in style and look of the series. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the upcoming film are both prequels to the original trilogy of books, which means fans get an inside look at an earlier period in Panem's history. So, while the team wants to create continuity, they also want to add new layers to Suzanne Collins's world. Sunrise on the Reaping hits theaters in November 2026. Thanks for joining us behind the scenes. We hope you enjoyed getting a closer look at how the first Hunger Games movie came to be, from how the cast trained for the games, to the inside scoop on casting, to how they built Panem, and how it all connects to the most recent and upcoming Hunger Games movies. If you like this kind of content, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next for Collider Behind the Scenes.